I never wanted to go. Not because I didn't love my friends, but because I had a bad feeling about it. One of those gnawing, unsettled thoughts that sits in your stomach like swallowed stones. But it was supposed to be a celebration. We had just finished our final exams at East Shore University in North Carolina, and we were all set to graduate. Me, Alina, Jordan, and Noelle had been inseparable since sophomore year. All of us had just turned 22. We needed this break. Alina called it our last hurrah before we got pulled into the real world. Jobs, internships, bills. The cruise was Jordan's idea. A 5-night trip to the Bahamas aboard the Starlight Serenade, a mid-size cruise ship that left out of Miami. It was cheap, all-inclusive, and promised white beaches, bottomless margaritas, and club nights on the open water. I tried to make excuses, but they were persistent. "You need this, Isla," Alina had said on the group call. "You've been stressing since March. Come unwind, please." So I went. I packed dresses and bikinis, left my cat with my cousin, and took a crowded Greyhound down to Miami, where we all met up the night before at a budget hotel. The next morning we boarded the ship. The excitement was infectious. Everyone on the ship was in full vacation mode, laughing, taking selfies, already halfway to tipsy before the safety drill even started. By the first night, I'd nearly forgotten my reservations. We dressed up, did our makeup, drank champagne in our cabin, and made our way to the ship's rooftop bar. I wore my pale green dress and wedge sandals. The ocean breeze swept through our hair as music played from outdoor speakers and people danced under string lights. Noelle, our loudest and most flirty friend, started chatting with a group of guys near the bar, and we all joined in. I was nursing my second cocktail when I noticed a man across the deck watching us. He wasn't part of any group, just standing there holding a drink, staring a little too long. I looked away, didn't think much of it. The next day, we docked at the first island, Pearl Cay. It was everything you'd expect from a Caribbean stop. Bright turquoise water, overpriced drinks, a beach packed with tourists. We spent the day sunbathing, snorkeling, taking pictures. That night, we planned to hit one of the ship's clubs, Blue Echo. Jordan was buzzing about some guy she'd met on shore. Alina was glowing from the sun. Noelle was already halfway through a rum and coke. We got ready in our cabin, a cramped but clean room with 2 bunk beds and a tiny porthole window. My phone buzzed while I was curling my hair, just a low battery alert. I tossed it on the nightstand and grabbed my mascara. We were out the door by 10:30. Blue Echo was packed. We danced. We drank. Noelle disappeared into a booth with a guy she swore was British. Alina and Jordan were giggling about something on the dance floor. I went to get another round. It wasn't until we were walking back to the room at 2 a.m. that I realized my phone wasn't in my purse. "I think I left it in the club," I told Alina, panic rising in my throat. She shrugged, slurring a little. "We'll check in the morning. Maybe someone turned it in." But I couldn't wait. I dragged Jordan back to Blue Echo. We searched everywhere. Under booths, on countertops, even the bathroom. Nothing. We asked the bartender. Nothing. I went to guest services. No one had turned in a phone. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I borrowed Jordan's iPad and used Find My iPhone. My heart leapt when I saw the little blue dot wasn't on Pearl Cay. It was still on the ship. "That's good, right?" Alina said, brushing her teeth. "Means someone probably found it and kept it safe." But I couldn't shake the unease. I went room to room on our deck, watching the screen. The dot didn't move. It hovered somewhere close. Too close. That night I checked again. It was moving now, slowly. It passed near our cabin, paused, then continued down the hallway. Day 3 felt wrong. I didn't go to the beach with the others. I stayed behind and walked the ship with the iPad in my hands. Every hour or so I refreshed the location. The dot kept appearing near me, then disappearing, then returning. Someone on the boat had my phone, and they were moving with me, watching me. I told security. They barely blinked. Probably a glitch, the officer said, sipping his coffee. Signal bounces around a lot on ships. That night I found an envelope under our cabin door. No name, just Isla written in black ink. Inside was a handwritten note. "You're even prettier in person. You looked so happy dancing last night. I can't stop watching you. You should smile more. M." My blood went cold. I showed Alina. She freaked out. Jordan wanted to tell guest services again. Noelle said I was overreacting. "Creeps flirt like that all the time," she muttered, rolling her eyes. "Block him or whatever." But he wasn't messaging me. He was near me. That night I moved the desk chair under the doorknob before going to sleep. On day 4, the dot showed up at breakfast. I looked around the dining hall. Dozens of people. Anyone could be M. Alina tried to make light of it. "If it's really someone stalking you, why not just confront them? I don't even know what they look like." Then Jordan said something that stuck in my brain like a splinter. "What if it's one of us?" I laughed nervously. "Don't even joke about that." But that night I noticed something. Noelle was always the last to leave the room, and she had a new phone case that looked eerily similar to mine. She claimed she bought it on board, said it was pink when mine was beige. But when I glanced at the back of her phone while she was in the shower, I saw the tiny crack near the camera lens. A crack I knew, because it was mine. I didn't confront her right away. I waited until everyone was asleep. Then quietly I went through her bag. At the bottom, under her cosmetics, was my phone. Still powered on, still logged into everything. My heart raced. I turned and saw her watching me from her bunk. "Put it back," she said, voice low and calm. "Why did you take it?" "I didn't take it. I found it." She climbed down, slowly, like a predator. "You left it at the bar. It was unlocked. I just couldn't help myself." I backed away. I only looked at it for a minute, then I saw the photos, the videos, the notes. I felt like I knew you, the real you. "You wrote the letter?" She tilted her head. "What letter?" I didn't sleep. I held the chair under the doorknob again and gripped my pepper spray until dawn. The final morning I showed the others. Noelle denied everything. Screamed that I had set her up. She grabbed the phone and hurled it against the wall. It cracked in two. Security intervened. They didn't arrest her, but they detained her until we docked. I filed a full report. So did Alina. Jordan cried. When we disembarked in Miami, I felt like I was breathing clean air for the first time in days. I thought that would be the end. I deleted everything from the cloud, changed passwords, got a new number. But 3 nights later, at 3:12 a.m., my doorbell rang. I lived in a small apartment off campus. No one just showed up. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. I checked my security cam. The footage showed a tall figure in a hoodie standing at the door for 13 minutes, just standing, then walking away. The next day I found an envelope in my mailbox. Inside was a single photo. It was me, asleep in my cabin, taken from the crack of the bathroom door. I stared at the photo in my hands for a long time. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might throw up. It was me, curled up on the narrow cabin bed, blanket up to my chest, mouth slightly open. The photo was grainy, but clear enough to see that it had been taken from just a few feet away. from the bathroom, from inside the cabin. The door had been closed that night. I was sure of it. We always kept it shut, which meant someone had been inside. I dropped the envelope and checked every lock on my apartment. Windows, curtains, closets. I didn't sleep, not even a second. The next day, I called the police, filed a report, showed them the footage, the photo. They took it seriously, finally. But there were no fingerprints, no DNA, no signs of forced entry. My security system showed nothing after the figure left. Whoever it was, they knew how to stay invisible. I moved, got a new apartment in a different city. I don't post online anymore. I don't go on trips. I don't even tell people my last name. And still, every so often, I get a new letter. No return address. Just my name. Just a note. Sometimes it's a compliment. Sometimes it's a photo. Sometimes it's blank. But it always ends the same way. And now I sleep with the lights on, just in case he comes back. It started with an impulse. I was standing behind the bar of the same dimly lit restaurant I'd worked in for almost 4 years, shaking a cocktail shaker with one hand and scrolling through my email with the other. That's when I saw it. Now hiring. Bartenders for luxury cruise liners. Travel the world. I don't know what it was. Maybe the late night exhaustion. Maybe the way my manager had just berated me for forgetting a lime wedge. But I clicked it. And once I did, I couldn't stop thinking about it. 3 months later, I was boarding the Oceana Valeria, a sleek, massive ship run by Horizon Voyages, ready for my first assignment. A 16-night cruise through the Atlantic, stopping in the Canary Islands, Morocco, and finally Portugal. I was 26, newly single, and needed a fresh start after a messy breakup and a series of late-night breakdowns. My name is Isabel Monroe, and for as long as I can remember, I dreamed of the ocean, not the beach, not summer holidays, but open water. I grew up in Flagstaff, Arizona, about as far from the sea as you could get. Maybe that's why the idea of endless blue stretched out in every direction seemed so magical to me. Peaceful, isolating in a good way. Life on the ship was fast-paced and exhausting, but in a thrilling, almost surreal way. Our bar was one of the busiest on the lower deck, right next to the nightclub, and I quickly adapted to pouring cocktails for laughing tourists, honeymooning couples, retirees, and rowdy college students on break. It was a constant flow of people, stories, energy, and I loved it. For the first 12 days, nothing unusual happened. I worked nights, took naps during the day, sometimes sunned myself on the staff deck when I had a rare break. I made friends with some of the other crew, Lana, a fellow bartender from Melbourne, and Mikey, a security officer from Liverpool who always brought me a black coffee before our shifts. There was even a guy from the entertainment staff, Callum, who'd started flirting with me halfway through the cruise. It was lighthearted. I felt safe. Until he started coming to the bar. It was the 13th night of the cruise. We had just pulled away from our stop in Lanzarote. The sun had dipped below the water, the ship gently rocking, and I was finishing up a mojito for a couple when I noticed him. He was tall, mid-30s, neatly dressed in an open-collared black shirt and dark jeans, clean-shaven, light brown hair cropped short, a well-maintained beard. But what stood out to me were his eyes, gray, pale, almost silver. They met mine and didn't move. He ordered a simple gin and tonic, nothing flashy, but he didn't drink it right away. He held it in his hand like it meant something. "You make it better than most," he said after his first sip. "Thanks," I replied. "Ship gin just hits different." He smiled but didn't laugh. "I'm Ethan Caldwell, by the way." I told him my name, professionally, and left it at that. but he didn't leave. He nursed the drink slowly, watching the dance floor, sometimes scribbling in a small leather notebook. I wasn't uncomfortable, just curious. He was quiet, polite, tipped well, never flirted. The kind of guy you forget by morning. Only he came back the next night, and the one after. He started opening up gradually, told me he was a travel photographer, that this cruise was supposed to be a mental reset. He didn't go into details at first, and I didn't press. But on the 15th night, the second to last of the cruise, we spoke longer than usual. I had just finished a shift and sat with him for a few minutes, off duty but still in my uniform. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "You ever love someone so much it eats you alive?" he asked suddenly, his voice low. I blinked. Yeah. Once he nodded, like that answer meant more to him than it should have. "She died last year. My fiancée. Her name was Mia. Car accident. We were supposed to be on a cruise like this one. Instead, I buried her 3 days before the departure." I'm so sorry," I said, genuinely rattled. "It's fine. You don't have to say anything. People die. Life keeps going." Something in the way he said that chilled me. There was no emotion, no grief, just acceptance. Cold, practiced acceptance. "I think you'd have liked her," he added. "You kind of look like her, actually." I paused. That made me uncomfortable, but maybe it was grief talking. People say weird things when they're grieving. I'd heard it at funerals. I tried not to overthink it. Before I left, he asked to buy me a drink. I told him I'd already clocked out, but he insisted. He even asked if he could mix it himself just to get it right. Normally, I'd say no. There were protocols, but something about him felt trustworthy. And I didn't want to be rude. Stupid, I know. He stepped behind the bar, mixed a simple rum and Coke, handed it to me with that unreadable, quiet smile. I took one sip. The world tilted. It's hard to describe what happened after that. I didn't black out instantly. It was like my brain knew something was wrong, but my body couldn't respond. My vision blurred. My arms felt like they were moving through molasses. I tried to say something, to call out, but my tongue felt paralyzed. Then nothing. I woke up to total silence. I was in my cabin, alone, on my bed. My head throbbed like I'd been hit with a hammer. My limbs were heavy, tingling. My throat was dry, and I was tied, hand and foot, with shoelaces, duct tape over my mouth. My uniform was still on. I hadn't been touched like that. But my room was a disaster. Every drawer pulled open, my suitcase gone, my closet emptied, my makeup bag tossed upside down, my tablet, wallet, everything, gone. The safe was open. My emergency credit card and passport, gone. Panic surged through me so hard I nearly threw up. I don't know how long I stayed there, writhing and crying behind the tape. Eventually, Mikey found me. The ship had docked in Tangier for a short stop, and I'd missed check-in. They assumed I'd overslept. Thank God someone came. Security took it seriously, quietly. They didn't alert the guests, just did their own internal investigation, kept me away from the bar, and reviewed the footage. Ethan, if that was even his real name, had disembarked during our last stop in Madeira 2 nights earlier. He had taken his things and vanished into the city. His cabin was cleaned out. No sign of forced entry, no fingerprints in my room. And somehow, the cameras didn't catch him entering my hallway, just exiting. They offered me hush money, not explicitly, but they called it employee wellness compensation. Told me not to speak to the press. Promised they were working with Interpol and local authorities. None of that mattered. Because 2 weeks after I flew home to San Diego, a plain white envelope was waiting in my mailbox. Inside was a photograph. It was me, standing at the self-checkout at a local grocery store, bags in hand, looking exhausted. The timestamp said it was taken 2 days earlier. I dropped it and threw up in the sink. The photos kept coming. Every few days, another one. Me walking to work. Me on the light rail. Me at a gas station. Never up close. Always just far enough away to show that whoever it was following me, watching. I changed my phone number, wiped my socials, bought cameras, changed the locks, reported everything to the police. They did what they could, but there was no active threat, no face, no prints, no proof it was him. Probably someone messing with you, one officer said. Ex-boyfriend, maybe? I wanted to scream. Then one night I heard knocking on my bedroom window. Software measured, not urgent, just enough to get my attention. I live on the 3rd floor. I moved the next morning, left everything behind. New city, new job, no social media, no cruise ships. It's been 5 months, no more letters, no more photos. I don't know if that means he gave up, or if he's waiting. The worst part isn't what he took. It's not even the fear I live with now. It's the guilt, the constant question looping in my mind. Why me? Why did I trust him? And the fact that someone, somewhere, might still be watching, waiting, planning, and I'll never see him coming. I never planned to go on a cruise alone. Honestly, it wasn't even my idea. It was my sister Rachel's, the kind of person who says things like, "You have to treat yourself sometimes, Alina," and genuinely believes it'll solve your problems. She meant well. After the breakup, the job stress, and losing Dad all in the same year, I think everyone in my life could sense I was slipping into a fog I didn't know how to lift. When Rachel surprised me with a week-long solo cruise ticket, leaving from Charleston and winding through the Caribbean with island stops, I didn't have it in me to argue. "You need ocean air, Sunday, margaritas," she told me. What I needed was to feel something again. So I packed a week's worth of sundresses and paperbacks I wouldn't read, said goodbye to my cat and the apartment that felt more like a waiting room, and boarded the Celestia Blue on a cold March morning. It was a massive ship. 15 decks, 4 restaurants, a casino, even a miniature bowling alley. It should have been exciting. But from the moment I stepped on board, something felt off. Nothing dramatic, just a subtle unease. Maybe it was the quiet way the crew looked at me when I checked in. Maybe it was how my key card didn't work the first time, and the woman at the counter hesitated before reassigning me a different room. "You're in B426 now," she said, glancing at the screen too quickly, almost like she didn't want me to ask questions. I didn't. Day 1 was uneventful. I explored the decks, sipped a rum cocktail by the infinity pool, FaceTimed Rachel from the upper deck while the ship pulled away from the coast. That night I wandered the party floor. Music pulsed from the lounge like a heartbeat. I sipped a watered-down mojito and watched groups of people dance under purple lights. Everyone seemed to be with someone. Families, couples, girls on bachelorette trips. I didn't mind being alone, not really. But then I noticed him. A man, maybe late 40s with thinning hair and a sharp jaw, standing near the back wall of the lounge. He was wearing a button-down that looked slightly too stiff, like it had been freshly unpacked. And he wasn't drinking. He wasn't dancing. He was just watching. I met his eyes by accident. His stare was too direct, too calm, He didn't look away. I turned and left soon after. B426 was on the lower deck, tucked in a quiet corridor that always seemed a little colder than the rest of the ship. I had to pass an out-of-order elevator and a staff-only stairwell to get there. The hallway lights buzzed faintly, flickering sometimes like they hadn't been changed in a while. The first night, I slept okay, but the second night was different. It started with the dream. I was back in my old childhood home, the one in Carolina before Mom left. In the dream, the lights were off, and I was walking barefoot down the hallway. Every step creaked, the walls stretched longer than they should have, and the air smelled like salt and rust. I opened a door, Rachel's old room, and someone was standing in the corner. He turned. He had no eyes. I jerked awake, my skin clammy, heart hammering. The digital clock blinked 3:04 a.m. At first, I thought it was just leftover dream fear. Until I heard it. Knock, knock. Software just twice. My breath caught. I stared at the door from the bed, frozen. Another knock. A little louder. I forced myself to get up and crept to the door, my bare feet making no sound on the thin carpet. I looked through the peephole. No one. I opened the door a crack. The hallway was silent. Empty. Goosebumps climbed up my arms. I checked the lock twice before I backed away. Maybe it was a prank, a drunk guest. I lay back down facing the wall, tried to slow my breathing, and then I heard the lock click, not loud, but distinct. I knew I had locked it. I sat up fast, staring at the door. It looked unchanged, still closed, still bolted, but I didn't sleep again. The next morning, I dragged myself to the buffet, bleary-eyed. A woman across from me at the omelet station smiled politely. She looked around my age, late 20s, maybe early 30s. "Rough night?" she asked. I nodded. Couldn't sleep. She hesitated, then said, "You're in B-deck, right?" "Yeah, 426. Her smile faded. We were in B410, moved after the second night. My fiancé swore someone was trying to open our door at 3 a.m., 3 nights in a row. I stared at her. "Did you report it?" We did. They said it was probably crew doing rounds, but why at 3 a.m.? We exchanged numbers. Her name was Jessa. That night I kept the TV on for background noise. I stacked my suitcase in front of the door, just to feel better. But again, 3 a.m., I woke to knocking. Twice. This time I didn't go to the door. I stayed frozen in bed, listening to the sound of the hallway lights buzzing. I swear I could hear breathing. The next day, I went to the front desk. Asked if I could change cabins. The young guy at the counter gave me a tight smile. "We're fully booked, ma'am. Cruise season." "I'm not asking for an upgrade, just a different room." He tapped something on his keyboard, then paused. "B426? I blinked. "Yeah." His smile faltered. "I'll put in a request. Might take a day or two." I turned to leave, but I heard him mutter, "Should have taken that room off the roster." That night I didn't even try to sleep. I sat upright in bed, fully dressed, TV muted, room dark except for the bathroom light spilling across the floor. 2:58 a.m. I heard soft footsteps outside. I held my breath. Then came the knock. Tap, tap. This time I didn't move. I didn't even blink. The knocking didn't stop. 4 knocks, then 5, then silence. And then the sound of the door handle slowly turning. I let out a sound. Not quite a scream, more like a strangled gasp. The handle turned back and forth once, twice, then stopped. I couldn't take it anymore. I threw open the door, ready to yell, ready to see a drunk teenager or a crew member with a clipboard. But the hallway was empty. Except, at the end of the corridor, half shrouded in shadow, was a man. The same man from the lounge. He didn't move. I stepped back into the room and slammed the door shut. This time I didn't bother with the front desk. I went straight to ship security. The officer, a short woman with tired eyes, listened as I told her everything. She didn't write anything down. B426? She asked, her tone flat. Yeah, she nodded once. We'll check it out. They never got back to me. But the next morning I found Jessa again. I did some digging, she said, glancing around before handing me her phone. There was an old article, archived deep online. A Celestia Blue guest had vanished mid-voyage 2 years ago. A man named Daniel Hurst, last seen on B-deck, cabin 426. His wife had gone to report him missing after waking up alone. She swore she heard the door open at 3 a.m. Security claimed he jumped overboard, but his body was never found. I moved cabins that day. Jessa helped me push for it. The new room felt warmer, safer. But on our final night, walking back from dinner, I passed the hallway to B-deck, and I swear, just for a second, I saw him standing by my old door, still, silent, watching. When the cruise ended, I stepped off the ship with relief that felt like oxygen. Rachel picked me up at the terminal. You look like hell, she said, hugging me tight. I told her a sanitized version. Bad dreams, weird noises, ship paranoia. She doesn't know the truth. No one does. But sometimes when I wake up around 3 a.m. in my apartment, I swear I hear it. Tap, tap. And every time, I get up. Just to check. Just to make sure the door is still locked. I never imagined I'd be the kind of woman who booked a solo cruise. It wasn't something I'd ever considered, not when Aaron was alive. We always talked about taking a long trip, maybe something warm, maybe the Mediterranean. But like everything else we meant to do together, we put it off. He died 3 years ago. Car accident. A rainy Thursday night. A patch of black ice. A driver going 20 over the limit. One wrong turn and that was it. I was 35 then. No kids, no siblings, both parents gone. My world went from full to empty in the time it took to answer a phone call. In the months that followed, I buried myself in work. Admin at a logistics firm in Manchester, New Hampshire. Stacks of invoices, customer emails, lunch at my desk, and silence at home. But one night something shifted. Maybe it was the 4th glass of boxed wine, or maybe just the sound of the house creaking like it always did in March, but I sat up, opened my laptop, and started searching cruise lines. I didn't know what I was looking for until I found it. A 7-night Aegean cruise departing from Istanbul, looping through the Greek islands, and back again. I stared at the screen for maybe an hour before clicking Book Now. You sure about this? My best friend Lacey asked, eyeing me over her coffee cup. I nodded. I need something that feels like movement. I've been stuck for too long. She studied me. Just promise me you'll text every port. You're not the solo traveler type. I wasn't the widow type either. She didn't have a response to that. The ship was a sleek, modern thing called the Callisto Dream. It could hold 2,000 passengers, though it didn't feel that way. The staterooms were small but stylish, the dining options absurdly excessive. Pools, bars, a gym I knew I wouldn't use. The first day was spent exploring the decks, fumbling with the app on my phone that tracked activities and trying not to cry every time I saw couples. I had dinner alone that night, seated at the edge of a shared table with a couple from Idaho and 2 sisters from Prague. They were kind, chatty. I drank 3 glasses of red wine and laughed more than I expected. Later, the cruise director hosted a welcome party on the mid-deck. Colored lights bathed the area in soft blue and purple tones. A DJ played throwback hits. People danced. I stood near the railing, letting the sea breeze hit my face. That's when I saw him. He stood just at the edge of the crowd. Not dancing, not talking. Just watching. Mid-40s maybe. Shoulder-length brown hair, kind of stringy. A scruffy beard, worn cargo jacket. He looked out of place, like he'd wandered in from a hiking trail. I thought maybe he was another solo traveler. But it was the way he was looking that unsettled me. Not curious, not flirty. Just fixed. Like I was the only thing in his field of vision. I looked away, looked back. He was gone. Wasn't that guy weird? I asked a crew member the next morning at the coffee bar. Which guy? I tried to describe him, but she just shook her head. We get all sorts. The cruise's first stop was Syros, charming little town. I walked through the whitewashed alleyways, poked into shops. I even bought a scarf. For once it felt almost peaceful. Until I sat down at an outdoor cafe and looked across the street. There he was. Same man. Same jacket. Standing beside a lamppost, unmoving. Arms at his sides. His eyes locked onto mine across traffic. I stood immediately, knocking my drink over. A waiter rushed to help, but I was already walking fast down the street. I turned left, right, ducked into a crowd near a busker. When I finally dared to look back, he was gone. Back on the ship, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was just another guest. Maybe he was harmless. Maybe I was imagining things. But it happened again in Naxos, and again in Samos. Each time the same. Standing, staring, vanishing. Never spoke, never smiled, never got too close, but never far enough to be coincidence. I even went to the ship's guest services. Have there been any incidents? Any complaints about a male passenger acting odd? I asked. The woman behind the counter typed for a moment. Nothing flagged, ma'am. Do you have a cabin number or a name? No. Security cameras might help, but unless he's doing something dangerous. I understand. She smiled kindly. Cruises are full of unfamiliar faces. Sometimes our minds play tricks when we're in a new environment. By the fourth night, I started dreaming of him. I'd see myself in a corridor on the ship, walking toward my stateroom. Every door was ajar. Water trickled from each room, pooling in the hall. And at the far end, him. Always him. The worst part, I wasn't afraid in the dream. I felt drawn. In Lesvos, I finally decided to confront him. I spotted him near the entrance of a park. I didn't hesitate. I crossed the street and walked straight toward him. He turned and walked away. "Hey," I shouted. "Who the hell are you?" He turned a corner. I chased. But by the time I reached the alleyway, he was gone. The space was empty except for a small, overturned trash bin. No doors, no windows, just sunlit stone. That night, I went to the ship's medical office. "I think I'm hallucinating," I told the doctor. He asked about my medications. I took none. He asked about trauma. I told him everything. He listened without judgment. "You've been through profound loss," he said. "Grief does strange things, especially when you try to avoid it." "I'm not avoiding it." "Then why now?" he asked. "Why the cruise?" I had no answer. The final night of the cruise was a masquerade gala. I wasn't going to go. But something in me needed closure. I needed to see once and for all if he'd be there. I wore a black dress Aaron once said made me look like an Italian Audrey Hepburn. I tied the velvet mask to my face and made my way to the ballroom. Laughter, champagne, lights. A string quartet played a haunting waltz. And across the dance floor, him. Only this time he wasn't standing still. He was dancing. With someone. A woman. Blonde. Laughing. I weaved through the crowd trying to reach him. But each time I got close, they slipped away. Out a door. Down a hallway. I followed them to the upper deck. They were gone. I stepped into the night air. The sea stretched endless and black around the ship. And then, I heard a splash. I rushed to the railing, heart racing. Below, just for a second, I saw a face rise from the water. Pale, wet hair clinging to skin, eyes wide and unblinking. Then, it vanished beneath the waves. I screamed. Security came running. They scanned the water, the deck, the logs. No one was missing. No one had gone overboard. They checked the cameras. And here's the part that still makes me question my sanity. On the recording, I was alone. There was no man, no woman, no dance, no chase. Just me, alone. It's been over a year since that cruise. I haven't spoken of it to anyone until now. Not even Lacey. But last week I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photo, black and white, grainy. It showed the upper deck of the Callisto Dream. From that last night, I was in the frame, at the railing, and standing behind me, his face blurry but unmistakable, was him. I hadn't taken a vacation in almost 4 years. Between client deadlines, late-night deployments, and my growing anxiety about everything from rent to my cholesterol, a break felt less like a luxury and more like survival. So when my boss, Mark Henderson, invited me on a cruise, 5 days through the Gulf on a mid-tier liner called the Pacific Dream, I didn't hesitate. Mark wasn't like most managers I'd worked under. He was sharp but casual, the kind of guy who'd wear sneakers to a board meeting and still somehow get everyone to take him seriously. We weren't exactly friends, but we got along. He liked to joke around, talk music, buy the team lunch on Fridays. The invitation wasn't just for me. A few others from the company were coming along too, but I was the only one who said yes. "It'll be fun," Mark said when he offered. "Just a break. No meetings, no slack. Just ocean and food and trashy poolside drinks." I wasn't even thinking straight when I said yes. My brain heard ocean and no meetings and jumped. Later I'd wonder what would have happened if I'd just stayed home. We boarded from Galveston, Texas, late afternoon, just as the sun started tinting the sky that warm amber that makes everything feel cinematic. Mark had brought his wife Jenna, sharp-eyed and quick to laugh, and their son, Ryan. Ryan was 16, polite in that half-present way teenagers are. He had a mop of brown hair, rarely looked up from his phone, and seemed more interested in the ship's Wi-Fi than the ship itself. The first 2 days were as blissful as I could have hoped. The ship was big but not overwhelming. 4 pools, a mini theater, a few bars, and a restaurant that made surprisingly decent pasta. We docked in Cozumel on day 2, wandered around the tourist traps, and came back with overpriced souvenirs and sunburns. Ryan mostly kept to himself. I'd see him around the upper deck with a few other teens hanging near the arcade or slouched under some umbrella with earbuds in. Jenna called him low maintenance. Mark just shrugged when I asked if he worried about him wandering around. "He's more interested in TikTok than trouble," Mark said. "If he gets into anything, it'll probably be too much Sprite." That night, technically early morning on day 3, I woke to a pounding knock on my cabin door. Thud, thud, thud. I jolted up, heart hammering. I sleep heavy, always have. It took me a moment to orient myself. Cabin 412, forward deck. The knock came again, frantic this time. I opened the door to find Mark standing there barefoot in pajama pants and a t-shirt. His face looked hollow. "Is Ryan here?" he asked, voice tight. "What number?" I rubbed my eyes. "Why would he?" "He's not in the room," Mark said, voice cracking. "He said goodnight around 10, went to grab a soda. He never came back. We searched his floor first. No sign. Called guest services. They paged him over the intercom, subtle enough not to alarm guests. No response. By 2 a.m., ship security was involved. Ryan's last known location was near the arcade. Security footage showed him walking toward the rear deck with a drink in hand. Then, nothing. No footage of him coming back, no clips of him heading into any of the open access lounges. Just gone. The ship wasn't massive compared to some mega cruisers, but it had its fair share of tucked away hallways and maintenance doors. Staff assured us they'd lock down the restricted areas and check all guest accessible spaces. Mark's hands trembled when he tried calling Ryan's phone. It rang twice and went to voicemail. Jenna paced back and forth by the pool, eyes scanning the shadows. "Maybe he's asleep in one of those lounges," she kept saying. "Maybe he met someone and they're watching a movie. He's done that before. Right? Right?" No one answered. By 3:30 a.m., I joined one of the search teams. I was paired with Sandra, one of the ship's security officers, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s with a flashlight and a radio that never stopped crackling. We checked unoccupied cabins, one by one. The air felt too cold. Everything was too quiet. When we opened cabin 569, my heart dropped. Ryan was inside. He was curled on the floor in the corner. His hands were tied behind him with some kind of cord. His mouth gagged with a balled-up t-shirt. He looked up, wide-eyed, face streaked with tears. I ran to him, helped untie him as Sandra radioed for help. "It's okay," I kept saying. "You're okay. You're safe now." But he didn't look okay. He didn't even look like the same kid. After we got the gag off, he just kept whispering. He said he'd kill them. He said if I made noise, he'd kill my parents. "Who, Ryan?" I asked. He hesitated, eyes flicking toward the hallway. "I don't know his name," he said, voice hoarse. He was wearing black, hoodie, jeans. He grabbed me near the elevator. Said he'd watched me. Said this was about my dad. Mark and Jenna arrived seconds later. Jenna dropped to her knees. I was 13 when my parents decided we needed a break from the monotony of everyday life. We didn't come from money, not really, but my dad had picked up a big contract earlier that year doing HVAC installs for a new office complex, and for the first time in a long time, we weren't living paycheck to paycheck. My mom had been researching cruises for months, dreaming, she called it, but one afternoon she came home, practically glowing, holding a stack of printed papers and yelling from the door, "We're going!" I didn't believe her at first. Antarctica? A cruise? It felt impossible. But sure enough, 2 weeks later we were standing in the cold, wind-slick port of Ushuaia, Argentina, bundled in jackets, boarding a cruise ship named the Albatross. It wasn't one of those mega floating cities you see on commercials. This was smaller, sleeker, meant for adventure cruises, or so they said. There were about 300 passengers. That felt like a lot to me back then. I remember the first few days vividly. There was an excitement in the air, the way the ship cut through the dark sea, the way the cold felt so different from the winters back home in North Carolina. There were whales, penguins, Huge shards of blue ice floating silently past like sleeping giants. And the ship. The ship was like a maze. Metallic corridors, creaky stairwells, lounges with low lights, staff-only doors I wasn't supposed to go near but wanted to. I was the kind of kid who got bored easily, so the ship itself became a sort of playground. But I didn't know then how dangerous it could be to go exploring alone at night. The first 4 days were magical. My little brother Sam was only 8, so my parents were constantly with him, coloring in the kids' lounge, watching the goofy sea life documentaries they played in the mini theater. I was old enough to roam a bit, and they trusted me. There were supervised teen activities, but I wasn't into group things. I liked going off on my own, pretending the ship was some secret military vessel or haunted Arctic station. The nights were quiet, the kind of quiet that presses on your eardrums. The ship groaned and creaked in the cold. You'd feel the shudder of metal contracting. Sometimes the walls felt thinner at night, like the ocean was breathing just outside them. On the 5th night, I couldn't sleep. I was laying in the top bunk in our tiny cabin. Sam was softly snoring below, and my parents were passed out after wine and seafood in the next bed. I kept thinking about a stairwell I had seen earlier, a rust-colored metal door near the rear lounge that had no sign and wasn't in any of the ship maps I'd found in the brochure. It bugged me in that obsessive way things do when you're a curious teenager. I checked the clock, 2:03 a.m. I don't know what pushed me out of bed. Maybe boredom, maybe something else. But I slipped on my hoodie, slid the door open, and padded into the dim hallway. The corridor was empty. Just that quiet hum of the ship's systems and the occasional metallic ping somewhere deep in the bowels of the vessel. I walked carefully, the way you do when you're trying not to wake sleeping giants. I passed a few cabins, then the small library, then through the doors that led to the aft stairwell. It was colder there, less heated than the rest of the ship. The walls had condensation on them. It felt off. I was halfway down the steps when I saw him. He was leaning against the railing near the window at the end of the corridor. Tall, maybe 17 or 18. Thin, but not scrawny. He wore a dark jacket and had short-cropped brown hair, a bit messy like he'd just woken up. He turned toward me with an unreadable expression. "Didn't think anyone else would be up," he said casually, like we were old friends who had just run into each other at school. I froze a bit, then shrugged. Couldn't sleep. He smiled, but not in the warm way people do when they're genuinely happy. It was small, crooked. "You came to the right part of the ship. This is where the real stuff is." I tilted my head. "Real stuff?" He leaned in a little. "You know, the parts they don't tell you about. The rooms nobody uses. The secrets." I wanted to laugh, but something about the way he said it gave me goosebumps. "I'm Liam," he said. I told him my name, Emma, and we just stood there a moment, the silence stretching. Then he jerked his head toward the stairwell behind him. "Come on, I'll show you." I don't know why I followed him. I tell myself it was curiosity, maybe a little thrill. We went down 2 more decks. The walls here were different. No framed photos, no carpet. Just cold metal and yellow lights that flickered slightly. He led me to a door at the end of a hallway and pressed his ear to it. "Maintenance deck," he said. "They lock it during the day, but I know a way in." He didn't wait for me to answer. Just pulled a card from his pocket, probably stolen, and slid it into the reader. The door clicked. The hallway beyond was tighter. Pipes lined the ceiling. The hum of machinery was louder. It smelled faintly of oil and salt. "Not many passengers make it down here," Liam said. "Which makes it useful," I glanced at him. Useful how? He grinned, this time more genuinely. Depends what you're into. We kept walking. He pointed out doors, one that led to the laundry chute, another to a storage hold. He rattled off crew schedules, meal cart routes, which stewards left their keys lying around. At first I was impressed. Then it started feeling like too much. How do you know all this? I've been on 3 cruises this year, he said. My mom works for the company, leaves me to wander while she works upstairs. He stopped near a grated vent and crouched. This one goes all the way to the captain's hallway. I once watched him yell at his assistant for 15 minutes straight. Wild. His voice had started to change, not in pitch but in tone, quieter, more intense, more entertained. Sometimes, he added, when I'm bored I sneak into cabins. I stiffened, just for fun, nothing serious. People leave stuff out, phones, jewelry, wallets. He looked up at me. Ever taken something just to see if you could? I shook my head. He tilted his head. Shame. You've got potential. That was when it clicked. The way he watched me, the way he moved. He wasn't just exploring, he was hunting. I suddenly realized how far from our cabin I was, how deep in the ship, how quiet it had become. I should probably get back, I said. He stood slowly. Sure, he said, still grinning. But if you change your mind, I could show you more. I backed away. I'm good, thanks. He didn't follow me, just watched as I turned and hurried down the hall, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. It took me nearly 15 minutes to find my way back. Every turn felt like it could be wrong. Every creak of the ship felt like it could be him. When I finally reached my cabin, I locked the door and climbed into bed, shivering despite the warm blankets. The next morning I didn't tell anyone. What could I even say? Hey, I followed a creepy guy into the maintenance deck and he might be stealing from passengers. But I avoided the back stairwells. I stuck to my family. I didn't go out alone. I didn't even want to look for him, though part of me kept scanning crowds. 2 nights later, the ship buzzed with gossip. Someone had been caught stealing from one of the VIP suites. A Swiss businessman had reported a missing Rolex and a large amount of cash. The ship's security had launched a search. I was in the lounge with my parents when I heard the name, Liam. I nearly dropped my glass. He had been caught sneaking into a staff hallway. They found stolen keycards and a stash of items hidden behind one of the ceiling panels in the crew deck. He wasn't some bored teenager. He wasn't traveling with his mom. He had boarded under a false ID. He wasn't even on the passenger manifest. He had been living on the ship, blending in, moving through places no one watched. I didn't sleep for the rest of the trip. Every sound felt like a warning. Every shadow in the hallway seemed to move. The cruise, once magical, had turned into something I couldn't wait to escape. I didn't want the icebergs. I didn't care about whales. I wanted off that ship. They locked Liam in a crew cabin under guard until we reached the next port. After that, he was handed over to authorities. No one saw him again. At least, not on the Albatross. But the memory stuck. The smile, the vent, the casual way he spoke about taking things that didn't belong to him, about sneaking through the ship like it was his own. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear the hum of the engines, still feel the cold of that hallway pressing in, and I wonder how many other ships he's been on, how many other kids he's smiled at,